You're visiting the Mom Next Door and our stories of faith. I'm glad you dropped by for a visit. Please stay a while and hear what the Lord has done in the lives of moms just like you and me.
Today, I want to introduce you to my friend Leah. And I was just thinking how cool it is that God brings people around. You know how we hear about that tapestry, that God is creating a tapestry, and someday we're going to turn it over and we're going to see how all these threads work. You know, the bottom can be messy and the top is a beautiful picture. And I think part of that is the people that we meet. And so I met Leah when they first moved to Oregon and they were homeschooling, and I met her at a homeschooling event. And I don't remember detail, but I do remember meeting you, Leah, at this homeschool event, and then finding out you didn't live too far away from us, and then just enjoyed your company. And I found out that your daughter, Sarina, has special needs. And so you were just able to share your heart with me concerning her. And it really opened my eyes and helped me to learn more about the special needs community. And so why don't you take a second to introduce yourself, and then we'll just jump in.
Well, I'm Leah, and we have 3 children. Sarina is our oldest, and she's the one, she has seizures and she's developmentally delayed. And then we have Levi and Lydia. They're 11 and 6, I think. Their birthdays are all coming up. And I remember actually Pam saying about how we met. And I remember before we moved to Oregon, I was very nervous because homeschooling special needs is a difficult task at times. And I emailed her about it. And she's like, well, we don't really have anything here. And then I met her at I think it was the homeschool roundup that we used to have there in Salem. And and she was very helpful to get me involved in the homeschool community and get me connected. That was probably with the other special needs parents. So, yep, we got connected. And my husband's also a pastor, and that was kind of, well, that was why we moved to Oregon, was to pastor a church there, which plays into some of the topic today with pastoring and homeschooling and special needs and all that goes together.
Yeah, it was really good to hear your perspective on homeschooling. And like I said, yeah, I don't feel like we had in our community something really set up to support special needs families, but I knew several special needs families. And so I feel like I couldn't add much to the conversation, but I could connect people. And sometimes that's what we need, is the people, the support structure, because that's what it comes through, is through each other. And so I don't know how far you want to go back with diagnosis or just life as a homeschool mom, or did you have any thoughts about where you wanted to jump in?
Well, I could give a little background. Sarina has had seizures probably since she was born. We didn't find out till she was 4.5, and then that changed our life completely. She does well now, as far as she doesn't need a lot of physical help, but she still has a lot of seizures. So when she has those, she does need a lot of help. So it's kind of it's an interesting situation. I don't have a child that's in a wheelchair, but I can't leave her either. So that's probably the background.
I know one thing, as I've seen, is you celebrate your success a little different, and your successes and your milestones are different than another family, like you said. And every special needs family has a totally different series of I guess things to celebrate, right?
Yes, that's probably the thing that maybe, I don't know if it was one of the hardest, probably not, but it was a hard thing because you have all these hopes and dreams. At least I did. I always wanted to be a mom. I loved kids. I wanted to, have 12 kids actually. And I, with her needs, I'm not able, we had to not have 12 kids, but to learn to accomplish where her milestones at her pace, because you want your kids to do well. I mean, and I still want I want them all to do well, and I want my younger kids to do well too, but you can't put her on the same or your special needs child, wherever it is for her. It was like learning to read when she was 10, and she still doesn't read well, but at least she did. That was something we never thought we didn't know if she would ever be able to. And so that's definitely for me, it was a learning thing to learn to accept that, it still hurts. I mean, it just does when you, I feel bad that she sees the other teenagers, she sees all this, and she wants to do it all and she can't. And that hurts for me, but you just learn to adapt. And it's been good for our family in a way. I feel like it is making my other children more sensitive and more caring. I will say this is one of the things I remember specifically, and it stuck with me when we first found out about Sarina's seizures. I went, I felt like I needed so much help. Like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was getting into. Of course, she was developmentally delayed as well. So she's 13 and that she's probably 6 or 7. That's kind of her cognitive level. And so I tried to find all these people that had special needs kids because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so within our church, there was another pastor's wife who had a special needs child. And so I talked to her some, and they had a teenage boy at the time. And I talked to him and I said, if you could tell special needs parents anything, what would you tell them? And he said, tell them not to forget about us, the neurotypical children. And that was so helpful to me because with my other kids, we did celebrate the milestones that they have, but my time is so focused on Sarina. So because we have appointments, we've got doctor's appointments. And then if she has a seizure, then, we've got to take care of that. Or if she hurts herself, we end up in the hospital because of, a seizure, which we've done before. And so that was really helpful to try to make time for my other kids on their level. Don't make them, stick on her level, but on their level. And that, that is a lot of sacrifice at times for my husband and I, because there's only, there's 2 of us and we have to take turns.
I imagine that's kind of hard too, because Sarina being your oldest, it feels like we should celebrate. Sarina should learn to read first. Sarina should learn to swim first. She should learn all these things and have these milestones first, just thinking chronologically. But when your younger children are the ones celebrating those successes, I'm sure it's like, well, we want to celebrate those successes of Levi and Lydia, but it probably feels like, are we stealing that from Sarina because she should have been first? So I imagine that's a lot of just thinking through the process for your family is different than the process in other families.
Yeah. And I think it's important that the other children, the neurotypical children, are allowed to celebrate and not, say, well, Sarina hasn't, or, your child hasn't. So they consequently, you can't, or whatever. I'm not sure. Or you're not, we're not going to celebrate quite as much because it might make her feel bad. And my other children have had to learn. I'm actually just yesterday, she was playing on this machine we have and acting like, it was like it's a side by side or whatever. And acting like she was going to town. Well, she has to sit a lot because if she has a seizure, they're usually grand malls, and she just falls. And you can't, if you're not right there, you can't catch her. So there's a lot of sitting that she does. And so there's not very much that she can play with. And so my children had to learn, Sarina had certain things that she could play with and they couldn't. And that actually, I had to learn that because I'm always like, everybody share, but it was for our family. That was something we had to do because my other kids can run all over our property and, go explore all this stuff, and she can't. And so that was difficult. And they still, sometimes they'll say, well, it's our turn. I'm like, well, but you can go ride your bike, and she can't because she can't ride her bike right now with the seizures.
I think that would be a really good reminder and a good opportunity for all of us to just say, God, you created each child in a unique way for a unique purpose. And I think we need to spend some time studying our kids, neurotypical or not. Study each one, and instead of thinking them all the same and parenting them all the same and responding them all the same, what a good lesson for all of us to remember that each one was made uniquely and that God has a special purpose for their lives. And we just need to step back as parents and look at that. And I think that is a wonderful lesson we can learn from what you're saying. Why don't you just jump into what a day looks like in your home? Like, how is that? Because I know that, and here's the thing, we could talk logistics, like the physical care. And I want to hear if there's physical care things that take your time. But ultimately, what you told me is that you wanted to talk about raising special needs children in a godly home. So I think what you're going to tell me is how you focus your day to the things that really matter, and to, in teaching her about faith and being part of your home from that perspective.
Well, we don't have any typical days. We'll just put it that way. But we do, we are forever changing, partly because her care changes. But I think some of it was just our life, as far as like raising her to serve the Lord, because that was a big thing. I don't know where her cognitive, I don't know, if she can ask Jesus. I mean, she has actually, she has, and she remembers it, which is good. I'm glad for that. She's asked Jesus into her heart. And but some of my goals in our days is I want her to like be involved as much as she can in because I teach my kids songs, and we memorize scripture, and we include her in that, like when and we're moving, so in the midst of our move, it's kind of a little different. But like before, we would have like our morning time, and she didn't have to do everything. Like we would, read our Bible, and we would read our devotional book, and then sing our songs and say our scripture verses. And then we always tried to learn another song, and she was always included in that. I didn't push her to, she didn't have to learn all the words to the songs like I did with the other kids. And or she didn't have to learn all the words to her scripture verse, but she did have to try. And so that was something I felt like it was important for her. And then the other thing I feel like, and this can be a hard thing, is taking them to church. I know my husband's a pastor, and so it's kind of a given. I'm at church pretty much. If the doors are open, that's kind of where I'm supposed to be. And so it's a lot easier I don't know if it's easier, but it's a lot more like, okay, this is our job in a way. This is what we're going to do. But I feel like that really has helped her. She loves to go to church, but it hasn't always been easy, because even though my husband has been the pastor of most of the churches we've gone to, people don't always understand. And that was one thing I heard a lot with friends, was taking special needs kids to church. They can't always go with the program. They can't, and people don't know how to deal with them. And even some of the churches we pastored, I just took it like I had to, not like I'm some great person, but like I had to teach them. That was something that God had gifted me with, a child, and my husband was the pastor, and we had to be there. We didn't have a choice to be like, well, I'm not going this Sunday because they're having a bad day. Although we did do that some too. But some, like I said, and then other churches, they've just been great. Some of them, we actually, one of the churches we pastored, the previous pastor had an autistic child. So that was easy. We kind of just moved into that. We didn't have to train them. And I don't mean it wrong. It's just, people have to learn if you're not used to dealing with a special needs child.
So what does that look like? Like, how can we as a church support a special needs parent? What makes it, like you said, some of our churches were really great. What do they do that it just, is it looks in their eyes of kindness, or, they don't, because I've heard of families where they get a tap on the shoulder and say, excuse me, that one's being disruptive, you need to leave. So are we talking just simply the absence of that condemnation and that, please head you to the other room? What makes this?
Well, there's several things. And one is the like you said, the look in your eyes. Sometimes, because that can be, if you're a special needs mom and you're going to church and you're already stressed because it took whatever to get that child ready. Because I mean, Sarina doesn't have a whole lot of sensory issues, but I know some kids, they just do, and they can't stand the clothes they wear. You know, Sarina has done well at that. So I haven't, but Sunday mornings have been the worst day for most of her life. And I think just because it's a lot more structured, you know, because we homeschool, we can kind of do it on her schedule, but you know, we have to be somewhere on Sunday morning. But the other thing is, because I know people's talked about meltdowns or whatever, but special needs kids do have a lot of them because they can't process what's going on. They can't express how they feel. They can't express if someone's mean to them. And, you know, kids sometimes can just be mean. That's just, I mean, maybe, I don't know. My kids are mean sometimes, and I try to help them not be, but that's just, you know, sometimes they are, and they can't express those feelings. So if they have a meltdown, that was like one of the biggest things, I think, was the acting up in a service and being tapped on the shoulder and telling you need to take your child somewhere else. That like really makes people feel like, well, you know what? I don't really want to go there anymore because that was embarrassing. And then so that was a big thing, like not making a big deal about the child's issues, which is good for neurotypical and special needs kids, because neurotypical kids have, you know, can have meltdowns too, but the special needs, I don't feel like they come out. Like it's a little bit harder for them to work through their meltdowns at times, depending on what causes it. The other thing is we actually were part of a nonprofit organization. It was called, I think it was called Steps, and it's a training program. It's in Arkansas, and it's a friend of mine, and she started this, and we helped her, and they train churches for special needs to be more inclusive or whatever for special needs. And mainly a lot of it is for the children's programs that they have, because children's programs are hard to do for special needs. But that was something very helpful for me, even to see what she had going on. And, you know, one of the things, especially if there's a bigger church, like having certain even teenagers or young adults or even older people, whoever would volunteer, to have them designated as a helper. So that child could go to the Sunday school or the junior church, or, you know, whatever the church had as a program, so that a lot of times the kids can't go by themselves. And so the parents would have to go, or they weren't, you know, they could go, but they really needed someone right there with them. And so that's two things. And then the other thing, I don't know if I've ever actually done it in our churches, but I had the idea and other people did it, was busy bags. I know I did one of the, whatever you call them at the homeschool convention, the sessions where they did, Tana Meyer did the busy bags there too. But we just got these little canvas bags with the handles, and we put like these are fidgety toys, because that's really helpful. And my goal was to have like a coat rack hanging in the back and just have them filled. And as they came, and they would be for any child, like not necessarily special needs, but neurotypical as well. And that was helpful to have that. But the biggest thing I found from my friends as they talked about going to church, because my heart always was like, come to my church, because we will accept you the way you are, was just accepting us. Just don't make me feel bad because my child has problems. That's probably the biggest.
That's really good. The busy bags, in case somebody wants to pursue that, I have a page on my Pinterest, a board on my Pinterest with busy bags, because I did that a few years ago at a church we went to. We went and we bought like 20 bags, and then had like an assembly day where we got a group of ladies together and we created quiet things to do and put them in a busy bag. And that is a wonderful ministry. You know, even you hear people have quilting ministries and crochet ministries and stuff, but to create busy bags. So if anybody is curious or has not heard that term before, go to my Pinterest, which is, if you go look for Tending Fields on Pinterest, you'll find it. And I have a board on there, and that will just give you some ideas of where to get started. And I'm not sure, Leah, you said that Tana did a room at the homeschool conference where they actually put together and assembled a bunch of these busy bags to take home. I know I've also done a swap. So when Anybody
Cool.
could do this. If you just have like a bunch of preschoolers and you get 10 moms together or 5 moms, then, say you've got 5 moms and we all want to have busy bags for our children. So then each one chooses one busy bag. So I'm going to do 5 busy bags exactly the same, and you're going to do 5 busy bags exactly the same. And all 5 of us are going to show up, pull our cars up together and swap them. So at the end of our meeting or meet for coffee or something, we go home with 5 different busy bags. But it's so much easier doing things assembly line style. And then also for the cost of supplies so that you don't have to set up different things. So anyway, that's just a fun idea for anybody that anyone can do. So
Definitely.
Yeah. So what else did you have that you might want to chat about? And you know what is so fun? I've got to tell everybody that we set up this meeting and you ended up having to do the meeting in your car on the side of the road. And so I'm so thankful that we're Zooming our interview right now, and you are sitting in the warm sun in your car so that we can have this conversation. We used to live maybe 5 minutes from each other, and now I'm in Tennessee and you're in Wyoming. Neither of us are in Oregon anymore, so it's kind of fun to stay connected through the miles.
It is. One of the things I know that we had chatted about was the family, how the family can help has been helpful for me. And we actually have not lived, except for 1 year since I've been married, close to family. We actually live 3 hours again from our family. But the helpfulness, because that's close enough that I can get, like, if we have big appointments, the other kids can go stay with grandparents or whatever. And we have friends here in this area, so that's good. But my mom was a big help. She's actually a caregiver, and she's been one most of her life she's currently taking care of my grandma with dementia. And so that's been really good to have somebody there that can provide respite care. I feel like that is probably one of the most important things for special needs parents. I'm really picky who I leave my kids with. So my parents or his parents have done, that's usually if we go away or whatever, for a couple of days, and that's usually on our anniversary. But I found those times that I can take, even if it's just my husband taking her for a few hours, and he is really good about doing that. Because her care is really emotional and mental. There's not a whole lot of physical, except for, like I said, when she has a seizure, then you have all that. But as far as during the day, but having the break of, thinking about her, trying to deal with sometimes on the spur of a moment. If she has a seizure, then I have to deal with that right away. Or if she has some type of meltdown, then, we've got to work through that right away. My brain has to be working all the time. And that doesn't, once after I've been there for months, it feels like without a break, then I need it. And I really recommend, if you can, of course, listen to me. It's hard for me to do it and then I worry about her, with her care and everything. But it's really good that you need, if it's not your family, because I know some family, whatever, they're not Christian or whatever, then it may not be a good choice. But find somebody, if you can, to give you even, a couple hours of respite care. And if you can do it where you can do it with your husband, if you're married, then that's really good for your relationship. We've found that's been a good thing. We don't take a lot of dates, except for in home. Like sometimes we'll do a night, just a in-home date after the kids are in bed or something. And just because we've been so far from our families, but that was something that's been very helpful to try to get a break.
So taking a nap and sleeping 8 hours at night is not what you're talking about. You're talking about an additional time where you can just rest and renew, because just sleeping, although you need the sleep too, just sleeping is just sleeping. Sometimes you need awake and alert, that you are not the person on call, that you can
exactly
step away and renew without being the caregiver right then.
Well, and even the night, I mean, it's good to get your rest and try to take care of yourself and stuff, but because her seizures happen at any time, including in the middle of the night. As you know, how I know when my kids were little, really tiny, you always have that. You've got to make sure they're safe at night too. And then as they get older, I think sometimes, they're not going to stop breathing quite as much as maybe when they were an infant. And so you have that at night too, that something may happen in the middle of the night. So it's important to get that break. I feel like, if you can. I realize that it's not always possible. Everybody's situation is different.
So a good place to find those workers would be a very well-trusted neighbor, a church member, or if you really needed to, there's probably a respite care available through like doctor's offices and things like that, maybe through some sort of support system outside of your family too, I would think.
Yes, there's actually several different, there's different ways you can go about it, especially if you don't have like family support or church support. Sometimes other churches in the area will put on a respite night. We did one. 99 Balloons is pretty popular in the United States to help churches start those. It's called 99 Balloons. That's really good because part of that is all the workers have to do background checks, and so that's a good thing, because being keeping your child safe as well. So to me, I'm probably extra paranoid or something, I don't know. But she can't talk, so that was a big thing for me. Was she's partially verbal, and so her expressing herself is still very, very hard. I guess maybe I should have mentioned that early on, but she's partially verbal as well.
But her siblings know her language. So when you get a caregiver in, even if your caregiver doesn't know all that, I'm sure that the siblings can interpret, right?
Yes, actually, the younger ones are better at interpreting. The Lydia will tell us numerous times. She'll be like, "She said this." It's like, oh, okay. And then that's helpful as they get older too, because Levi can actually, he's 11, he's almost 12, and he actually can assist in her when she has a seizure. He can't, she's too big for him to really like do everything, but he can at least break her fall if he's there. And so that's help. That's really good. Because I just can't always be right beside her.
Yeah. I think, like you said, being raised with a special needs sibling is also preparing them for something like, what is God going to do in their lives later? It's kind of cool to just see how the Lord knits families together for a greater purpose.
Mm-hmm. She's definitely been a blessing to us. I mean, how do I say it? Sometimes I wonder, like, because my husband is called to preach, he's called to pastor, and that's a big full-time job. And we've pastored mostly small churches. So he's always had to work another job. And then we have her, and that's a full-time job. and sometimes I wonder, like, why did God choose us to have her? But she has opened doors to people that would have never let us even into their life, because you don't necessarily choose. I mean, I guess if you adopt a special needs child, you get to choose, but you don't necessarily choose that your child is going to have issues. So there's people from all walks of life. And Sarina, actually this morning in church, we're doing a home church right now. When the people walked in the door, the rest of us were kind of waiting. And when the people walked in the door, she was like, "Oh, so good to see you," in her language. "So good to see you," and giving people hugs. And it's like, she makes people feel so welcome, that she's so glad to see them. And that's a blessing, because I know some of us that, can think clearly, if you want to put it that way, because I don't know that I really do think clearly. Our emotions are, oh, what are they going to think if I say, "Oh, it's so good to see you," or, maybe the way you're feeling. She doesn't necessarily have to deal with that. She knows she's glad to see friends, is what she calls. She calls everybody friends. And so that's very helpful. My husband actually said something when I was talking to him. I said, what do you think about, when I'm doing this podcast with Pam? And he's like, one of the things was that God has a plan for every life, and special needs people have special ministries too. They impact society in a way that others cannot. There is immense joy that often gets overlooked because the tendency is to focus on their needs and ministering to them and forgetting about helping them develop their ministry. Discovering and developing a non-typical person's ministry can bring purpose, meaning, and fulfillment into situations that perhaps can be full of doubts, questions, and difficulties.
So I love that, because he is saying, you know what? Don't write them off that it's their special needs and it's only us investing in them, that they have a special place in God's kingdom and they have something to give too. So when Sarina, she doesn't have the walls that everybody else has.
Exactly.
And yeah. So then that person who comes in who is feeling disconnected maybe and maybe feeling unloved, Sarina is all love. So, what a wonderful ministry she can have with those people. Wow, Grant, that was so smart. I'm glad you gave your wife those notes.
He probably should have done this. He can speak a lot better than me. Of course, he's got a lot more practice.
No, I don't want Grant to speak. I want Leah to speak because you are the mom next door.
Yeah, true.
In a different state, but next door,
Right.
What have we missed? What other things do you have written down?
Well, three other things that I found was helpful in our daily life and raising her to be as godly as she can be is when we first found out about her diagnosis, I prayed. I felt, how am I going to homeschool a child like this? I don't know. I don't know what, I mean, I know how to homeschool. I was homeschooled, I graduated from homeschool. So I felt like I kind of had some experience, but a special needs child, and I was so scared, but God led me to a homeschool co-op in the state we lived in, not Oregon, a different state, in Missouri. And it was a special needs homeschool co-op, and it was not a Christian co-op, but it was based on Christian principles, because we wanted people that did not believe in God to be welcome in our co-op. So we wanted to make sure that they felt like they were, because there's so many, secular homeschoolers that have special needs kids, because that's a lot of times how they become homeschoolers, is because of their child. And that was so helpful to me to have that, to see these other moms that have already gone through some of what I was starting to go through. And when we first had her diagnosis and we were starting to go through that, I felt so lonely. I didn't know all these programs, and there's even more now that they had these families. They're like called family to family or family networking or whatever state. Each state has a little bit different, to help walk through that. But I didn't know that. Nobody told me. But I endeavored then. I said, you know what, these years have been so hard for me. I am going to try to help other special needs parents as much as I can. I mean, I don't want to push myself into their life or whatever, but I want to try to help them. So the homeschool co-op was such a help to me to kind of see how I could homeschool her. And if I had I don't know how to do this, I would ask a question. 5 or 6 moms would be like, well, this is what we do, or this is what we do. And so having that support. Of course, when we moved to Oregon, we didn't have anything like that. So I started a support group, and we didn't do all the activities of the homeschool co-op, because with my husband being in the ministry and in Sarina's care, I could not run it all by myself. So we just did a support group, and that was very helpful for my sanity because I met with these moms that were facing some of the same things that I faced every day. And we prayed together. We said, how do you do this? Just like we did on, the co-op, even though we didn't have the kids get together like the co-op did. And the others, prayer partners. My mom and my mother-in-law are, if I need somebody to pray for me, that's, I can text them and I can be like, Sarina's having a rough day, or I don't know what to do with this, and they'll pray. And I have other people that will do that. But I know my mom and my mother-in-law are probably the ones that I text the most with help.
Grandmas have a special place in the raising of our children. And sometimes it's not hands-on. Sometimes it is the work they do through prayer.
Mm-hmm. And my children are blessed that both sets of grandparents are Christians. Actually, I did have one more thing.
Go for it.
Okay. with the, I know we talked previously about the siblings, and we've had a lot of hospital stays, more than some, less than others. And one of the things that we endeavored very early on in the hospital stays, because we did do quite a few of them, was to make it fun. We always tried to do something fun with all the kids, either before or after the hospital stays. And I think that helped all of them not dread it. Sarina loves to go to the hospital. She loves to go stay at the hospital. We've tried to make it really fun. But I think as a family, because we were doing so much of it, I'm like, here we are. At one point I was like, here we are, we're wasting our life at the hospital. I'm like, no, this is part of our life, and I've got to make good memories with the kids. And so that's one thing that I felt like felt very helpful for all of the children to and us, because I like to make good memories with the kids. And it doesn't have to be, most of the time it wasn't very expensive, or it was free, because with my husband being in the ministry, we definitely didn't hit the really high marks on the dollar. And so it doesn't have to be like a Disneyland trip every time you go to the hospital. We'd go find a park that had some really cool. I know one time we went to where they had pyramids in Illinois, and just across the river from the hospital that we used to go to. And that was, my kids still talk about that. And that was years ago. So I felt like that was something that was helpful as we are raising all of our children with a special needs child, to create the good memories together. So I don't want them regretting their childhood. I don't want them to be like, well, all we did was go to hospital visits and sit in the waiting room with Sarina. I want them to have good memories.
You've done a beautiful job. I really appreciate the things you have to say and your heart for special needs families. And I don't think maybe you would have developed it the same if you hadn't walked that path. And so I think it's beautiful the way that the Lord has worked that in your life and given you this opportunity to pour out into other people, and in turn also be blessed. It's somebody that I have interviewed recently. She said, I love God's math, because the way he does it, it always just seems to come out with an excess. So Leah, would you like to close us in prayer and just pray for some of the moms and maybe some of the things they're going through?
Sure. Dear Jesus, thank you for this time. Thank you for the opportunity to witness for you. I pray that you would be with us today. Lord, you see the families that might listen to this, the moms that might listen to this podcast. I pray that you would help it to encourage them, help them as you see their needs, you see their daily life, and the stress and the hardship and the despair at times that we go through. I pray that you would just give them a special touch right now while they're listening. I pray that you would be with them, give them the strength and the patience and the direction and the guidance as they walk this journey that you've put them on. I pray that you would just be with each one of us. Thank you for Pam, and thank you for your goodness and mercy. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. It was good getting to talk with Leah today. And if she just touched your heart and you want to reach out and chat with her a little bit more, why don't you send me an email at podcast@tendingfields.net and let me know that you want to chat with Leah. Go ahead and I will just forward it on to her, and then she can touch base with you from there. All right. We'll talk to you later, ladies. Bye.
I hope that you've been encouraged or challenged in your faith today, and that something we discussed prompts you to grow deeper in your walk with the Lord. If it has, make sure you tell a friend so they can grow along with you. And if you or a friend would like to be a guest and share about God's faithfulness in your life, please email me at podcast@tendingfields.net. Because when we tell of God's faithfulness, we never run out of stories.
Whatever is true.